Hey y'all, what's up? I was scrolling on social media recently, and I recently discovered a post where a user was talking about a Toni Braxton track from 2005. Some of you may or may not remember it, but it was a track called "Please" off of that album that came thereafter, entitled Libra. And he said something that kind of had me thinking for a little bit. He said something along the lines of perfect lead single, perfect music video, just perfection. This should have been one of the biggest records of her career, but 2005, dot, dot, dot. And he mentioned another name, but I jumped in shortly after and said, oh, it wasn't because of that. It wasn't because of that artist. There was a whole story behind the Libra era. He then proceeded to say, "Please is a stronger record than said track, but Tony's promotional machine wasn't as strong as Mariah's. There was room for both of them, but Tony's people didn't apply pressure." Now, I had to turn around and say, well, I'm about to do a whole breakdown of the Libra era because this is something that you just had to be there to really understand. Um, and that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to get into Toni Braxton's Libra era. Okay? All right. Now let's get started. All right, let's get into it. So, Libra is the sixth studio album from Toni Braxton that was released on September 27th, 2005. It was her debut album on Black Round Records, following her leave from Arista Records after her More Than a Woman album that at the time was deemed commercially unsuccessful. And of course, the album's title for Libra that came from her astrology sign, which is Libra. So the album spawned single wise, and this is debatable. Okay. The album spawned the single Please. It spawned Trippin', but Trippin' was like it was a single, but it wasn't pushed the way it was supposed to be pushed. So I don't know if that can count. They ain't even shot a video for it. Okay. That's just what it was. Um, and Take This Ring was released as a third single and the final single here in the States. But it peaked on the Bubbling Under chart. It was one of my favorite songs on the CD. But we'll get into all of that in a little bit. And then of course the album had singles that were released overseas, such as the track Suddenly, which was the lead single over in Europe. The Time of Our Lives, that was recorded with Toni Braxton, and it was also recorded with The Star, which is a group. It was like Il Devo. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I hope so, and that's what that translation meant. Um, because the album was, of course, released overseas as well. Um, the album was a decent seller. It was certified gold for shipping 500,000 copies. Um, it debuted number 4 on the Billboard 200 with 114,000 copies, which is really good. It opened at number 2 on the R&B and hip hop charts. Um, it got its gold certification initially November 4th, 2005, for its shipments. Now she hasn't updated the sales and the plaques for that album, and we would really love that. So, Toni, if you are listening or you do listen to this, can you please update your certifications, please? Can you please do that? Thank you very much. Um, but we're going to get into the nitty gritty. So next up is the nitty gritty. When Toni started working on Libra, she initially started working exclusively with her then husband Kerry Lewis, um, that she married in 2001. He had been involved with her in prior albums, uh, as well as serving as an executive producer on the previous album, More Than a Woman. And they had worked on some tracks for Libra, which actually made the first record that they turned into Blackground. It was majority done by her and Lewis. Kept it simple. But Universal Records, which was Blackground's distributor in the U.S., they weren't satisfied with what they were receiving, and they didn't want to release that. So the international partners felt the same, and they questioned the commercial aspect of the ballad-heavy album. And Toni pretty much insisted on his further involvement with the album. And it was the CEO of Blackground, which was Barry Hankerson. I know y'all have heard that name before. That requested that she worked to make changes on Libra. So that ended up causing them to book extra sessions with newer producers, fresher producers like Scott Storch, Rich Harrison, and the Underdogs, because they wanted kind of like a more hard edge production, whatever that may have been. Because this is Toni Braxton we talking about, okay? um, and to this day, that kind of confused me, because this is, like I mentioned, Toni Braxton, and you want to try to further urbanize her sound. She had already made sweeping changes with the prior two albums, and we were good where we were at. But the story goes on, obviously. Of course, Toni, in her instincts, didn't really know and feel that her music should follow the current trends at the time. And basically, the whole gist of it was that her label wanted to make her more viable commercially. So she all of a sudden felt this pressure to have more. At the time in 05, with a lot of hip hop heavy sounds, a lot of up tempo sounds. And that's what she felt pressure to make. And she later admitted that, she felt like she was forced to put her artistry her artistry on the back burner to be more commercial on some of the songs. If you listen to the album, you can tell there are some tracks to where they definitely tried to have that commercial appeal. But she did mention that they try to be smart and incorporate those sounds into her sound. And with any kind of thing like change, it's not easy at first. Though eventually she conceded to it. She just wished the album had more slow songs, but overall she was satisfied with what was put out. But while she was promoting it, it was like she was trying to like take her signature sound and try to make it current. And at that time, artists were still being boxed in, especially black artists, in that box to where they see you as an R&B artist or hip hop artist. It's like one or the other. So how do I still be who I am without trying to urbanize it too much, trying to make it something that is not, because that's not me. You get it? So there were just so many moving parts. But next up, being that she was experiencing a lot of peace and happiness at that time, um, she didn't really have, she had a hand in songwriting, but she wasn't 24/7, 365 involved. And being that they did want to urbanize her sound, they wanted to make it more edgy. They wanted to add, of course, controversy, and that's not her either. She's not one that has to be, seen and heard all the time. She's not one of those. She wasn't one of the run of the mill girls in the industry. That wasn't her. She just loved to sing. So that's honestly where the ball already started to drop. That was already quite the amount of red flags. But we're going to move on to the next section. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next. Here it is. Libra comes out. Like I mentioned, it debuts at number 4. It's her fourth top 5 album. A big increase over her last album. It debuted number 2 on, like I said, the R&B and hip hop album charts. All right, all good and dandy. Fine. It was certified gold for the amount of copies they shipped that following November in the U.S. But it would have been her only album with background. Okay. Now let's take it back to the singles here, or the single, the single. Please was released May 30th, 2005. I remember when it came out. It was a good song. It was a catchy song. It was a nice video. But there wasn't I don't want to say there wasn't any promotion, because that simply was not true. That was not true at all. That was not true. The song was sent to radio almost as soon as it came out. A promotional CD was released as well. She visited the Ellen show. I remember when she performed the track with her sisters. She was on the, Tom Joyner Morning Show, Live with Regina Kelly. She did her thing. She had a whole tour for the album. But I mean, the song, it was mixed reviews when it came out. Some people said it was forgettable. Some people said it just picked up where the last album left off at. It was a standout track. I mean, I think it may not have been the right move for a lead single to launch an album like that, being that she just experienced what she experienced with the last album. That shouldn't have been the first single released. Was it edgy? Yes. But did it really reflect the sound of the album? No. Music video. Beautiful. It was wonderful. Loved it. But that was not the right song to release. It did not chart on the Hot 100. It bubbled under at number 4. It topped out on the R&B and hip hop songs chart at 36. The adult R&B songs chart at number 7. Okay. And at the time in the industry, that was deemed a failure. And that was the lowest lead single at the time of her career. The next single did not come out until the day before the album came out. And that was Trippin'. Trippin' didn't have no video. It was sent to radio. It had a European release. It once again another song that did not chart on the Hot 100. Charted. It charted on the R&B hip hop chart number 67. R&B, the adult R&B chart at number 19. And what did they classify it at that time as well? Another disappointment. The audacity that was given at the time by somebody from Billboard saying that it sounded like a track that was deemed for somebody like Sierra or Ashanti. While it was not displeasing, it was more of a response, call a response song more than her taking the lead and ponying up for whatever they wanted her to do with the song. Okay. Like I said, music was different at the time. It was a different environment. Well, the next song didn't come out until December, around that time. But it failed to enter the R&B hip hop song chart altogether. It peaked at number 12, bubbling under. The song had good reviews. Take This Ring. Great track. That track was produced by the same person that made Amory's One Thing. Okay. And everyone was calling it the best track on the album. One of the best tracks. Well, maybe that should have been the lead single. Something that was her signature sound, but it wasn't pushing it. It wasn't risking it too much. It would have worked. As the lead single, it would have worked. But the single had a lack of promo from her company, as the previous two singles. And back then, if your label wasn't trying to put any engine or steam behind you, oh yeah, you were determined to go. Yeah, shit was over before it started. But it was a good little run. And then of course, they went ahead and did some stuff like this in Europe and overseas with Suddenly and The Time of Our Lives. And those did well in the respective countries. But I honestly, the album, it really felt like it came and went. I remember when it came out, I remember the website, I remember everything they had for it, and it just kind of came and went. But then that would soon snowball into issues that were soon to come. Let's get into those issues, shall we? Like I mentioned before, this was her only album for Black Ground Records. Because in January 2007, she sued Barry Hankerson, the label head, claiming that he had owed her at least $10 million for maneuvering to have her abandon her long-time relationship with Arista and jump to his own label. And allegedly duped her into signing a multi-album deal with Blackground, only to deprive her rights under the recording agreement by failing to send her accounting statements and by lying about deals he made. Well, that lawsuit was settled very quickly in 2007 in February, okay? Listen, after she agreed on returning a $375,000 advance and paying royalties from her next album to Hankerson, which is very interesting because the same person that got her out of the deal with Arista, and that was her manager at the time, is the same way she ended up suing years later. Basically sounded like he offered a bunch of empty promises and didn't offer anything. But she did later express her discontent with the project, like years later. As she felt like it was, and it wasn't just that album. She just kind of felt like it was like a one night stand that she didn't want to talk about. You didn't want anybody to know about the records that didn't do well. If she felt she had a few, she definitely had a few. But, and I can understand that because at that time, artists, when you have a failure, you want to try to bury it and move on. You want to try to get past it. But thankfully, because the musical landscape changed and we started going to streaming, um, that actually helped a lot of the legacy artists out in a lot of ways. Um, and it helped a lot of people discover music they may have missed or may not have heard. And it definitely did with her in the long run. Libra is one of those gems. Uh, and I feel that she should focus back on it. She should focus back on all her albums the same. Libra was very, very good. There was some very good deep album cuts on that album as well too. But a lack of promotion, that's what happens. They didn't put their all behind it like they should have. But, we'll get into that with Blackground at another time. But I really do feel like if they really did put the engine behind Libra would have sold more. It would have went at least platinum. If they couldn't tell when they dropped the first single back early that year and it wasn't doing well, should have went back to the drawing board and picked another single and dubbed that as a promo? Dropped a high budget video and turned things around? Yeah, they could have, but they didn't. Back then it was a little different. You had to have your album pressed and ready to go, way before it came out. And even still, even if Please didn't take off the way they intended it, they should have turned around and released Take This Ring. They should have put a big budget video behind it. They should have put her everywhere, and they should have pushed that album release up. That's what they should have done, but they didn't at Blackground. And it was very disappointing for her. Very, very disappointing for her. And at the time, that was considered a commercial failure. So, fast forward into the late 2020s, Blackground actually had rebranded as Blackground 2.0 with Barry still the founder. And they ended up signing a distribution deal with Empire Distribution that ended up re-releasing that label's catalog on a digital sites and streaming services for the first time, including Libra. So, because Libra had been absent on streaming services for a long time, and they finally put it back on streaming services. So now that album is accessible all around the world for everyone to listen to and to enjoy and to find a new love for. And you know what's so crazy about it all? The critics like the album too. They got good reviews. They got great reviews. But once again, they loved the critics pretty much were like they loved the ballads, loved them, but were iffy towards the up-tempo material. And it's another one of those instances to where maybe you should have listened to the artist because maybe you would have had a hit on your hands. But she was so busy trying to make her current and commercially viable that you ended up doing the complete opposite. So, that's just my little op-ed there on Libra, the album from Toni Braxton, released in 2005, which was certified gold. Whew, that was one of those ones, y'all. One of those ones. But I'll be back soon, you guys, to talk about more albums because I have so much Oh, we got so many albums to unpack. So many. But I just wanted to start with this one here because I came across this as I was scrolling social media and decided to speak on it because a lot of people don't know what happened. A lot of people don't know the disconnect because it was so long ago. You know, we didn't have the age as digital as we have it now, to where everything was so transparent. But you know, we have the information still. The information is still around for the stories to be told so people can understand and develop a greater appreciation for the craft. So, with that being said, thank you for tuning in. And when you get a chance, if you haven't already, go ahead and listen to Libra in all of its glory. She was still ahead of her time on a couple of those tracks too. She was ahead of her time. She did her thing. Other than that, I'm out of here, y'all. Thank you. Now you know.